Welcome to Self-Care-ish, a podcast all about divorce, dating, choosing not to date, and saying no in a way that won't get you ostracized by society. I am Megan Lonrigan. I am a copywriter, former columnist, and also newly separated co-parent. I'm obsessed with meeting people where they're at in life, and where you're at, I'm guessing, is pretty busy. Most likely multitasking while you're listening to this right now. So with no further ado, it's time to get self-care-ish. Okay guys, welcome to Self-Care-ish. It's like selfish, but with care sprinkled along inside, like emotional hundreds and thousands dotting the fairy bread that is life. That's what we're doing here. Now, I have to start by apologizing for how I sounded last episode. It's so funny. When you're speaking into a microphone, you feel like you're being as animated as Jim Carrey on a bag of Coke. But then you listen to it again and you're like, wow, that woman sounds half dead inside. So apologies for that. I am working on dialing it up a notch this time. Everything gets dialed up a notch a little bit in this episode. I know that last time I kept things pretty general, but today I am prepared to open up a little by jumping straight into a topic that I know will be supremely helpful for someone out there, at least one person, but hopefully more than that. And this is because how to know when it's time to go was, no joke, practically my internet homepage for a good year before I finally got the courage to say, let's pull the plug on this marriage. And I know I'm not the only one. In fact, there are millions of people out there scouring Google and Reddit for answers. And the reason for that is because the answer is not cut and dry, unfortunately, especially if there's no obvious infidelity or some twisted emotional abuse that you can point to and say, oh yeah, that's it. I'm out. I actually have friends going through this stuff right now, and we will be exploring it in another episode. But sometimes it's just a feeling that something's just off, kind of like an itch you can't scratch, except it's not on your skin, it's in your soul. And you try everything you can to make it go away, like therapy, yoga, copious drugs. For me, I did singing lessons and contemplated learning how to scuba dive, but nothing works. You know why? It's because your body knows you better than you know you. And you know that deep down, don't you? And let me tell you, trying to justify staying in a relationship that's clearly run its course can make you feel like a freaking expert at rationalization. So let's get into it, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean. Okay, I'll take a sip of this martini that I've just mixed up. All right, we established in the last episode that people break up for all sorts of reasons. In this episode, I'm going to give 3 personal examples of times where I remember seriously feeling hopeless about my marriage. So grab yourself a shot of whiskey, a cup of coffee, strap yourself in, because it all starts with Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett fucking Johansson. I would watch that woman do pretty much anything. Hell, I would watch paint dry if she was somehow involved. And another actor I really love is Adam Driver. Don't get me started. Like every woman on the planet, I have a crush on him. And I even watched Star Wars The Force Awakens because he was in it. And I'm not even a Star Wars girl. So props to you, Hollywood, for Jedi mind fucking my wallet like that. So if you're a producer and you put these 2 gorgeous human beings in one movie, that is like a freaking gift to my eyeballs. And yet, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I still haven't watched Marriage Story. You know, Marriage Story is that movie where Scarlett and Adam are 2 creatives in New York. They're married, they have a son, and the whole film follows their uncoupling. I couldn't watch it when it came out. And it was on Netflix, no less. Like, the barrier for entry was so low that the TV was basically screaming at me, hey, you seem like a person questioning your life decisions. You're in lockdown. Why not watch this movie that seems almost impossibly relevant to your situation? And I was like, okay, TV, that's enough from you now. Go to sleep. Off you go. Bye-bye then. And I carried on with smothering down whatever my soul was screaming about. Even today, I've only watched clips on YouTube. Like that monologue when Scarlett goes to her lawyer and she describes how she fell in and out of love. And she says this line that goes, I'm going to say this in my best Scarlett voice. All the furniture in our house was his taste. I wasn't even sure what my taste was anymore because I'd never been asked to use it. Yeah, I know that's not the best Scarlett impersonation, but I felt that in my bones. Now, that is not to say that my ex was this overbearing ogre type. We had just fallen into a dynamic where I was very deferential. And everyone knows once you get into relationship dynamics, it can be very, very difficult to break out of them. And then she goes on to say this great line. She goes, I watched that documentary about George Harrison and I thought, just own it. Own it, like George Harrison's wife. Being a wife and mother is enough. And then I realized I couldn't remember her name. It's like genius writing from director Noah Baumbach. But funny story, I once met him in New York and I told him I loved his movie Being John Malkovich, which he didn't actually have anything to do with. So yeah, good story. Now, this is the part where I want to say being a wife and mother is absolutely enough, more than enough. And I know this because I'm a mother and we're literally driving the world's economy by sacrificing our bodies, giving birth, and then raising well-adjusted young humans who will inherit the earth or what's left of it. It is a fucking noble thing to do. And if you don't have children, that's also noble because you're also saving the planet by not adding any more to the carbon footprint. So everybody wins here. But it is hard because when you have kids, you sacrifice so much of the time you'd spend nurturing yourself into nurturing the ones you love. And we'll cover this in another episode because there's a lot to discuss here and you know I have opinions. Shock. Horror. But for me, that movie was a giant billboard on the side of the highway to breakup that said in big, bold letters, feeling divorcee? Call now. 1-800, good luck with that. Sips martini. Cut to another example of when I knew. This was on my last birthday before things ended. I knew my ex wouldn't do anything special for it, and that's okay because let's face it, our relationship was on its last legs. So what did I do? I booked myself into a fancy hotel room, giving myself the gift of space. And I got to be honest, it was really nice and it did feel really good to be a little selfish. But I think I also had this brilliant theory that if we spent less time together, it would make us miss each other more. You know, the whole absence, heart, fonda, etc. idea. But instead, I remember I just spent the whole night in that hotel bed, wide awake and alone, thinking to myself, something's not right. Something's not right. And you know what, guys? I was right. That relationship was like a flat tire. But instead of just changing it and moving on, we kept trying to inflate it with false hope and empty promises. And I mean, I am not a mechanic, but even I know that sometimes you just got to let go of the busted tire and get a new one. And yes, tires are expensive, but you need them if you need to make a quick getaway. Zing! Pretty proud of that little analogy. And now we cut to the final time. The catalyst for the breakup. Also known as the moment I finally got the strength to say the words, I can't do this anymore. And I knew it was officially time to leave. And the beauty of it is I didn't even actually have to say them because my ex did. We were in the car arguing. Thankfully, our son was asleep. And we'd reached that point in the argument, you know, where you can't argue anymore. Like there's nothing more to say. You don't agree. There's a heavy heavy silence, but you're screaming at each other in your heads. Finally, in frustration, my ex said, I can't do this anymore. Something needs to change. And I remember being in the car feeling elated, off the hook. My brain was like, oh my God, he feels the same way. This is amazing. We both agree. This sucks for everybody. But I didn't say it that night. That night I cried, and then I slept in a different room, and I texted him from the other room, and I said, I agree with you. Let's call time on this. Okay. Got to shake that off, because that was a fucked memory. And I hope me being vulnerable with you is taken in the spirit in which it is being given. It's not to complain about my ex or trauma dump on you, because, I mean, guys, that was nothing. I've got way more trauma than that. But that stuff is kind of like proprietary information, so in the vault. But it's more to demonstrate that knowing when to go is not linear. It's more like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while you're drunk. You keep twisting and turning it, hoping for some magical solution to appear. But in the end, all you have is a jumbled mess and an overwhelming sense of frustration. But what I will say is once you finally put it out there, officially, things move fast, like roller coaster fast. And it can be just as exhilarating, for a brief moment at least, before you have to do all the nitty-gritty stuff that goes along with the breakup. And that is actually what I'll cover in the next episode, because I think I'm going to make this divorce stuff more of a trilogy. So 3 eps, kind of like Lord of the Rings, but instead of fighting orcs and saving Middle Earth, it's all about battling your own demons and trying to find a way back to your own happiness. So stay tuned for next Wednesday, when I'll be talking all about the tips for staying sane in the beginning, middle, and end of your divorce. Also, if you want to have your say on anything I've covered today, or if you have wisdom to share in the form of your own uncoupling, please leave a voicemail anonymously if you like at selfcare-ish.com.au, and I'll include you next week. Bye.
Meg, it's Jane Schofield. I was so engrossed in listening to your podcast while I was curling my hair, and I ended up burning myself in the neck pretty badly. So go you. The podcast is great. Very engrossing. Loved it. Keep going.
Actually one of the best things I've heard in a really long time. I actually reached out to you when I discovered that you and your husband had separated, and I was like, what? Why? How did you come to this decision? So I actually really appreciate your insight, and I'm really excited to continue listening to you. Thanks so much. Bye.